Is Washington. Jim?
Privilege of being here this morning and talking to everybody about kind of where we're at, or at least the Washington State report. The main piece that I want to kind of convey here, partnerships, communications, they continue all the time, and it's not only just a silo, I stay here and tell you what to do. As Kim mentioned with our budget piece, I'll kind of talk a little bit about our budget and then more about communication in our plan or kind of our treatments. This is our network as it stands right now by surface type. It's a little bit, the numbers in the bullets are current with miles, the concrete miles, the HMA miles and the chip seal miles. The chip seal miles, if you're ever tracking this historically, they pretty much increase yearly, and the HMA decreases a little bit because we're overlaying them, at least at this time. We have about 18,000, between 500 and 600 miles. And to replace all of this would cost us about $16 to $17 billion. When we talk about a need for preservation, this is kind of where I want to really get moving. As you can see in the photos on the right, we see a future due, a near future due, and that's kind of in good condition. This is, I don't want to say how we used to do our preservation treatments. It used to be more on a time-based cycle with a little bit of maintenance as needed, emergent needs. But now we're working more in obviously, like everyone else, in the fair or the due, the past due, and the far past due. I don't know if anybody works in a far past due, but for preservation treatments in Washington State, I don't want to say live there, but we're moving there pretty fast. If you look at some of the miles, the future due miles, by type, we can look at ACP, the BSTs or the chip seals, and concrete with the grand totals. It's kind of staggering. And this is one way to kind of look at it, but hopefully this will give you another opportunity to kind of summarize what we're at for percentages by region. And we'll start there a little bit. I should have backed up a little bit, but we have 6 regions. A Northwest region contains about 2/3 of our population in the state. I don't want to say all of that, but it's growing. Tremendous. If you drive there at all, you'll see plenty of sticks in the air, but this gives you an idea of where we're at with the summary lane miles by percentage. Might be a little bit better when you're looking at regional miles and where we're at with far past due, which is the blue at the very bottom. Not a lot of far past due, but we have quite a bit of past due, the due, and then the total miles per region. Briefly touching on some of the things that Kim or everyone up here talked about was the money. And you could hear from Kim, we do things quite a bit different. The legislature directs a lot of our funds. And so when you kind of go, wow, there's a lot of variability there. But you guys also have the greatest, one of the best or highest gas taxes in the nation, so what do you do with the money? And this is a good example of what we do with it. A lot of it is currently going to bond debt, as you can see in the dark gray. The 23% in the bottom blue, at least currently in 2018, it's kind of similar now in 19, goes to specific projects pointed out by the state legislature. And then we have the question of local agencies. They get about 12 cents, 24% of the budget. The DOT gets 8%. So this is kind of I took one slide out. After listening this morning, I was kicking myself, going, I should have left it in. This is kind of where we've been at in the past. If you look at the lowest life cycle cost zone, which is the blue at around number 3 there, around $600 million. That's where we need to be in our state, just to keep it where we need it to be. As you can see, those numbers have dropped quite a bit. Bridge preservation's in the dark green. That's been up and down quite a bit in recent years. Pavement preservation funding has pretty much led that up until this current biennium, 2019-2021. It went, you get 4 cents, you get 4 cents. I don't want to. That's just kind of rough of the 8. You know, it's not specifically like that, but it's kind of where the money goes. You're going to split preservation needs, and that's how it goes. This is actually going to go down in 21 to 23 biennium also. So this is continually on a downward trend for at least 4 more years. And then it'll bump back up to kind of where it was in 17-19, based on $17. So it might actually be down a little bit, but. So where does maintenance get this funding? You know, of the whole package that the DOT gets, maintenance gets about 7% of that. And this is kind of how it breaks down by their maintenance operations. I wanted you to mostly focus on the roadway piece, we get about 12% of that. This roughly 57 million goes for 2 years, gets divided by 6 regions, and they get to do the work as they have the opportunity. Obviously, snow can take a lot of the budget. Since this is one big bucket, a good heavy winter may take some of that money away. And emergency disaster funds, those can go crazy. One summer, we can take a whole, basically the preservation work that we might do on our roadways might get halted just because of fires in one region. It varies a lot. As far as the strategic preservation types that we do, this is probably the bigger piece of what I want to get at least as how it applies to everybody else. We have a one-touch policy in our state. We cannot do what you guys might call a rehabilitation until we do some sort of a preservation treatment. A rehabilitation for us is really typically our working horse is a 1.8-inch mill and fill, which for most of everybody in here is a preservation treatment. We have good pavement designs in the past. We do 50-year designs. It's got some good depth. So we do work in the top. However, we still have to do some maintenance treatments, and this is how they pretty much break out. We work with crack seals first. That is our number one priority, lowest cost. We do rubberized and mastic depending on if it's a working crack, whether it's just a normal longitudinal crack or if it's a working crack, we typically move to the mastics on the working cracks. We do full width and wheel path chip seals, and you kind of go, that's different. And our maintenance crews actually moved that up in a few years back. We do patching, thin overlays, and blade patching at times. It's not a big piece of our work. Pretty much the blade patching is done for settlement issues and stuff like that. The thin overlays, we don't do very many. However, we've done them in areas where we just need to get by for a few years. There you go. So that was actually an interstate. The crack sealing, we do that on interstate too. Not on all interstate, but the I-90, the lower easels, but not the super high ADTs like we might get in Seattle. Wheel path chip seals we kind of typically use for 2 different types of wheel path distress. One is rutting, and one would be more of longitudinal cracking, where we have a whole bunch of longitudinal cracks. They're just minor. Instead of going in and doing crack sealing, it's more cost effective to just run out and do some wheel path chip sealing. We did some research in 2012. Our money in 2008 was a big problem. So because of that, it was kind of funny timing. We decided, well, let's pick some treatment areas around the state. We had some in the eastern Washington, some in western Washington, 2 very different climates. And we started this research in 2012. We continued it on and finished in 2018. There was a total of about 70 sites. Many of them had control sections included. And this is the breakdown of what we found through that research. There's a research report address at the bottom if you want to go into it. There's a lot of information. I don't want to say it'll put you to sleep, but it is very interesting. It's just a piece of it that we got out of this. I mean, we could dig and look at some of the discussion that's come up the last few days where, what do you look at for easels and how does traffic affect any of this? But the big takeaway here is the cost versus the life extension. So obviously in these for us, and they're kind of put in order of, what's the most inexpensive cost, and then what kind of life extension are we getting? And we typically do them in this order. So we'll run out. We have a one-touch policy. It may be we have to do wheel path chip sealing, but typically what we'd like to do is we'll run out and do some crack sealing early, extend it 3 to 4 years, come around and do a wheel path chip seal if we have to. And if this is continuing on down the road, it's performing well, the next thing that may come up is the need for a dig out or a patching. And then that's what we'll do. It's the most, not cost effective, but the most life extension is in that treatment. The big takeaway here, doing any kind of maintenance or preservation treatment is the most single cost effective thing you can do. We run anywhere from 5,000 to 20,000 a day with our maintenance forces, depending on whether it's a crack seal, obviously 5,000, and then to dig out about 20,000. And we get anywhere from 2 to 6 years life extension. So if you're looking at, hey, we're just going to do this one treatment and we're going to get 6 years, we're going crack seal, we're getting 2. We can do a wheel path chip seal, get 4 more, 6 more, maybe more than that. And then if we have to do some dig outs, we're getting some more on top of that. So we're maximizing everything we can as best we can. This is probably the biggest question. If you were to take away anything from us, would be it. How do we ensure our relevance? That was a question that was posed to us. And communication is number one. Our capital program, or our CPDM, the money people, work very heavily with our pavement management engineer, which is Kim at this time. They work hand in hand with, hey, what do we have for project needs, roadway distresses, and so on and so forth. However, our 6 region material engineers, who are I don't want to call them pavement engineers, but they work that role, they have their lists of needs also. So they confirm that information. So the main list is, hey, here's what we have for project needs. They're communicating that with our pavement management people, or people in the pavement office, discussing that, and then running those numbers up through, or those possible projects up through our CPDM. In addition, so we're working from the top down sort of there. From the maintenance standpoint, we're doing this from the bottom up. Our maintenance, our lead techs, our people that are working their areas are doing the same thing. Hey, these are our needs in my area. This is what I have. They work those up through our superintendents, who voice that to me all the time. But that also goes to their region maintenance or material engineers. So the region material engineers are getting it from the top down and from the bottom up. They have their master lists. They're running their roadways annually with the region materials engineers, work with our maintenance people to confirm the data that is in our pavement management program. So it's not just, well, hey, this is what we got, this is what you need to do. We thought that would be a good approach. However, that isn't always a good fit. We oftentimes go out, our payments office especially, this can go 4 more years before you need to do anything. There's no traffic out here. Well, it looks bad. It's performing fine. When we look at this relevance, you kind of say, okay, communication's paramount. This is great information. How do we pass on this knowledge? I want you to kind of remember the previous slide. We have a ton of data in our pavement management system. My background is mix. I spent about 17 years in our payments office with pavement management. I've been in this position with roadway maintenance since January. So we have a ton of data, a ton of very good data, and part of that includes, what is our estimated maintenance needs? And this kind of goes back to, are you communicating well with those people below you? And is this really what's going on? So this is just a simple little roadway segment. It shows in the top piece, darker brown, what is the extent of possible pavement patching. Below that is the purple, what kind of chip sealing might you need? And so it's kind of showing some options, as well as crack sealing in the bottom in the dark. A very good tool. The region material engineers are working with their maintenance folks. The other piece of this is, I'm going to try to tie this in to make a little bit of sense. So we have our preservation funds that we have. A small portion of that is provided to maintenance and operations. A very small piece, we call it P1M dollars, and then our maintenance dollars. Our maintenance folks say, well, we can do this work with our maintenance dollars. We could probably take on this work also. And so between the two of them, they say, okay, what's coming up? Okay, stay out of these segments of road. We're going to do rehabilitation, let's say a project, capital project, in the next 2 years. You don't need to really do anything, worry about it. You might need to do a little dig out here and there or hand patching. In this area, you can actually go in and do some crack sealing or some dig outs. We're not going to be into this area for about 4 or 5 years at best. And it may get pushed to 6. So if you need to do some dig outs, go ahead. So hopefully this kind of idea of this discussion scenario I kind of throw at you gives you the kind of communication that goes on at least once a year with all of our region personnel, whether it's region materials, maintenance superintendents. The work gets completed. Hey, this data gets put back into our payment management system, so we can look back and say, oh, hey, what was done? Was it successful? And what kind of distress was really there? This is an example of the following year. I could pull up data and say, hey, what do we have? And kind of shows what kind of maintenance treatment was done, where was it done, when was it done, And if this was online, I could actually move to the very far left. There's some underlined pieces, and we could click on that and say, well, this was actually the work that maintenance did. So maintenance went in there. They had some hand patching to do with this severe transverse joint where they were having a lot of problems. This was the work they did, when they did it, who did it. So great. Everybody goes, okay, fine. We know what your whole story is, Jim. What are you trying to get at here? The biggest piece in communication, it isn't only within what we're doing for treatments in Washington State. It's not only what we're doing for treatments, when we're doing them, what type. It is having to tell the full story to our legislatures. When we talk about asset management in Washington State, this is our need. This is what we're doing to try to meet all of the needs that the legislatures have mandated or said, what are you doing with all your money? This is where it's going. This is how it's going. And now we can turn back and say, hey, legislatures or legislators, here's what we've done, and here is our need. And if we can tell our story, the big one in maintenance is data equals dollars. So the more data that we can provide in detail, the better the story we can tell to upper management, to our money people, and then up to our legislators. So with that, hopefully I didn't put everyone to sleep. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me. I think I'm good on time. I hopefully saved a little bit. Thank you.
The preceding was produced by the National Center for Pavement Preservation. More information can be found on the web at pavementpreservation.org. Additional support provided by Michigan State University.